My dad let his new wife divide me and my brother and make us misunderstand each other, so I left, until he revealed a secret that destroyed her life. My name's Jason. I'm 17. Life's been pretty messed up for a while now, especially ever since my dad remarried. I didn't think it was possible for things to get this complicated, but here we are. It's been a wild ride, and honestly, I feel like I'm stuck in a nightmare I can't wake up from. Let me start from the beginning, though, so you can get the full picture of how things went down. So, my mom passed away when I was 10, which sucked big time. She had cancer, and it was rough watching her go through it. My dad, who's 45 now, didn't handle it well at all. He threw himself into work trying to keep everything together, but honestly, it was a mess. He was barely around, and I was just a kid, not really understanding what was happening. The only person I could rely on was my older brother, Ryan. He's 22 now, but back then he was 15, and he stepped up like crazy. I mean, this dude was basically my parent for a while. He'd make me breakfast, help me with homework, and crack jokes to make me laugh, even when things felt like they were falling apart. We became super close, like we had this bond that nobody else could get. Dad noticed and didn't seem to mind back then because he was too wrapped up in his own stuff. Fast forward a couple of years, and that's when Carla enters the picture. She's 40, works with my dad at his law firm, and came into our lives not long after her divorce. She's got a daughter, Molly, who's just a year younger than me. So, yeah, I was cautious when Dad introduced them, but I wasn't completely against the idea at first. I figured maybe this is what Dad needs. You know, maybe having someone around could make things better. Well, I was wrong. Things went from kind of okay to a complete mess faster than I could have imagined. Within 6 months of meeting Carla, they were engaged. I swear it felt like I blinked and suddenly my dad was planning a wedding. I remember just sitting there wondering how everything moved so fast. I wasn't ready for any of it. One minute it's just me, Dad, and Ryan, and the next I'm standing in this fancy bridesmaid suit at their wedding, watching two people I barely knew become family. The whole day was weird. Ryan saw I wasn't feeling it, so he spent the entire reception making goofy faces at me from across the room to cheer me up. That's when Carla really started to show her true colors. She wasn't too happy about Ryan's little antics and pulled him aside, telling him he needed to act more appropriate. Really? Dude was just trying to make me feel better. It wasn't even a big deal, but she made it one. Living with Carla and Molly after that was rough. Carla was nothing like my mom. She was strict, always making up rules about everything. I'm talking curfews, chores, and even how I should dress. Molly was cool with it, I guess. She liked the structure, but for me, it was suffocating. I missed how things used to be where life was a little more relaxed and Ryan would come by to hang out. Thank God for Ryan, though, because he didn't disappear when Carla moved in. He'd still come over to the house, usually with some prank or joke ready to go to lighten the mood. One time, he showed up wearing a full-on Superman costume. No joke. He walked in, cape and all, and claimed he was there to rescue me from the evil stepmother. I was dying laughing, but of course, Carla wasn't. She got so pissed, saying it was disrespectful and that Ryan was undermining her authority. Whatever. Dad thought it was funny, but Carla couldn't take a joke, and that's when things started to get really tense between us. She didn't like how close Ryan and I were. She'd always make these passive-aggressive comments about how unhealthy it was for siblings to be that close, saying I needed to grow up and stop relying on him so much. Dad tried to play the mediator, but honestly, he was pretty useless at it. He'd defend me at first, but the second Carla pushed back, he'd fold like a cheap lawn chair. It was like he was too scared to stand up to her. Every time I looked at him, I could see that internal struggle, like he was torn between his wife and his kids. And it hurt, man. It hurt to see that he might actually choose her over us. The breaking point came last week during our Labor Day barbecue. Now, this barbecue is a huge tradition for our family. Mom started it years ago, and it's always been this big deal. Friends, family, the whole shebang. Ryan had just moved back home after graduating college, and I was psyched to have him around more. We were all hanging out by the pool, and I decided to sneak up on Ryan and push him in. It's a game we've been playing since we were little. He came up laughing like always, and grabbed my ankle, pulling me in after him. We were both dying laughing just like old times, but of course, Carla had to ruin it. She stormed over, face red, yelling at Ryan, saying he could have hurt me and that he was being irresponsible. I tried to explain that it was my idea, but she wasn't having it. Then she turned on me, saying I was too old for this kind of behavior and needed to grow up. By this point, everyone was watching, and I was mortified. I just snapped. I told Carla to mind her own business, and that she had no right to dictate how Ryan and I acted with each other. The entire backyard went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I had never spoken to her like that before, and everyone looked shocked. Dad stepped in, trying to calm things down, but the damage was already done. The barbecue ended early with everyone making awkward excuses to leave. That night, Dad came to my room telling me I needed to apologize to Carla. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him straight up that Carla was the one who overreacted, not me. I reminded him of all the times she'd tried to come between Ryan and me, all the times she'd criticized us, and how she constantly made me feel like I didn't belong in my own home. I asked him why he never stood up for us, why he always let her push us around. He didn't have an answer. He just looked at me hurt and disappointed and said I was being unfair. I was done at that point. I told Dad I wasn't going to apologize until Carla did first. He left without saying anything else, and now the house feels like a battlefield. Carla won't talk to me directly, only through Dad or Molly. Ryan feels guilty and hasn't come over since the barbecue. And Molly's trying to play peacemaker, but she doesn't get it. She's never had to deal with a new parent being shoved into her life and making her feel like an outsider in her own family. And that's where I'm at now. Feeling stuck, lost, and not sure what to do next. So, after the whole barbecue mess, things at home got real awkward. I thought maybe after a few days the tension would ease up, but nope, it actually got worse. Carla barely spoke to me, and when she did, it was through gritted teeth or some passive-aggressive comment about respect. Molly was still trying to play peacekeeper, but her whole can't we all just get along vibe was seriously starting to grate on me. I get it. She's used to this structured perfect life, but that's not how I roll. I never had to deal with this kind of nonsense before Carla came into the picture. Anyway, I figured Ryan would step in and help. You know, like he's always been there for me, so I assumed he'd come around and try to lighten things up or at least have my back. But guess what? He stopped coming over. Yeah, completely. I didn't get it at first. I was texting him, calling him, but he kept brushing me off with stuff like, I just need some space right now. Or, let things cool off for a bit. I was fuming because this wasn't like him. Ryan always had my back and suddenly he was gone when I needed him the most. So, I finally cornered him on the phone and asked what the hell was going on. That's when he dropped the bomb. Yeah, I know I said I wouldn't use those types of words, but this one felt like a bomb to me. He said Carla had sent him this long-ass text about how he was disrupting the family and setting a bad example for Molly and me. She basically blamed him for everything going wrong between us. I could practically hear the guilt in his voice as he told me he thought it'd be better if he stayed away for a while to let things settle down. Settle down? Seriously? I couldn't believe he was just backing down like that. I told him that's exactly what Carla wanted to drive a wedge between us and he was playing right into her hands. But Ryan's always been the peacekeeper, and I guess he thought this was his way of making things easier. It was like he didn't want to fight anymore. He begged me not to confront Carla about it. Said it would only make things worse. I could hear the exhaustion in his voice, and honestly, it scared me. My brother, the guy who always stood up for me, was just tired. I hung up the phone that night, feeling more alone than ever. The one person I could always count on, had basically checked out, and I didn't know what to do about it. So, I just started keeping to myself more, staying in my room, avoiding Carla and Dad as much as possible. I knew if I tried to talk to Dad, it would just turn into another lecture about respecting Carla and how she's been trying so hard to make things work. Yeah, okay, Dad. Whatever. Then came the new house rules. Carla must have been feeling real empowered after getting Ryan out of the picture because she laid down a bunch of new rules that were clearly aimed at me. First, she decided I needed a curfew. A 9 p.m. curfew on weeknights and 10 p.m. on weekends. Like, I'm 17, not 12. And it wasn't like I was out partying every night. But here's the kicker. Molly didn't get a curfew. When I pointed out how unfair that was, Carla said it was because Molly had proven she was responsible, and I hadn't. Oh, and she started checking my phone. Not in a casual, let's see who you're texting way, but full-on monitoring my phone usage as if I was some sort of delinquent. She even threatened to take away my car privileges if I didn't start showing more respect around the house. And the worst part, Dad just sat there nodding along like a puppet. He didn't really seem to agree with her, but he sure as hell wasn't going to disagree either. It was like every time Carla pushed, Dad caved, and I felt more and more isolated. The breaking point came when I overheard them arguing about me one night. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop or anything, but our house isn't exactly big and when voices get raised, you can hear everything. Carla was saying that it would be best if I went to live with my grandparents for a while, you know, to learn some discipline. She even had the nerve to bring up how her parents sent her to live with an aunt during her rebellious phase and how it straightened her out. I was furious. I felt like I was being pushed out of my own home just because I wasn't fitting into Carla's perfect little family plan. And the worst part, Dad wasn't fully against the idea. He wasn't all in, but he wasn't shutting it down either. That hurt more than anything. Like after everything we'd been through, after losing Mom and trying to rebuild our lives, he was just going to let Carla push me away like that. I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped. I couldn't talk to Dad because he was clearly under Carla's thumb, and Ryan had bailed on me. Molly was trying to play it cool, but she didn't get it. She had never had to deal with losing a parent or suddenly having a new one forced into her life. This was normal for her, but for me, it felt like I was losing everything all over again. I was losing my home, my family, and even myself. That's when I started thinking about moving in with Ryan. He'd offered before, but I didn't take it seriously until now. The thought of leaving Dad behind tore me up inside, but I couldn't keep living like this. I felt like I was suffocating under Carla's rules, and Dad wasn't going to do anything about it. Moving in with Ryan meant starting fresh, maybe even changing schools for my senior year. But at least I'd have some breathing room. I spent a lot of time thinking about Mom during all this. I'd sit in my room looking at old photos or flipping through the photo album she made me before she died. There was one picture that always stood out to me, Ryan, Dad, and Mom at the beach. I was on Dad's shoulders and Mom was laughing while Ryan made a goofy face for the camera. We looked so happy back then, like nothing could ever break us apart. But here we are, broken. I wonder what Mom would say if she saw us now. Would she tell me to try harder with Carla? Would she understand why I couldn't? I didn't know. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in that house any longer. Not with the way things were. So, I made a decision. I packed a bag, grabbed the photo album, and called Ryan. That was it. I was done trying to make things work with Carla and Dad. If they couldn't see what was happening, then I couldn't stick around to watch them ruin what little family we had left. Alright, so here I'm staying with Ryan. It's been about a week since I packed up and left Dad's house. And man, it's weird. Like, I feel relieved, you know? No more walking on eggshells around Carla or listening to her stupid rules. I can actually breathe here. Ryan's apartment isn't anything fancy. He's still trying to get on his feet after graduating, but it feels like home. It's small, a little messy, but there's none of that tension hanging in the air like back at Dad's place. The first couple of days were kind of nice. Ryan didn't pressure me to talk about everything, and we just hung out like we used to. We binge-watched some terrible reality shows and ordered pizza, basically avoiding real life for a bit. But as the days went on, reality started creeping back in. I knew I couldn't just hide out forever. School was still a thing, and I had to figure out how to explain all this to my friends without sounding like my life had completely gone too. But the biggest thing on my mind, Dad. He hadn't stopped texting and calling since the minute I walked out the door. At first, I ignored it. I didn't want to deal with him or hear another one of his lame excuses about how I should respect Carla or how she was just trying to make things work. But after a while, the guilt started creeping in. I missed him. Despite everything, he was still my dad and I couldn't just erase that. So, one night after Ryan had gone to bed, I sat down with my phone and scrolled through all the missed calls and messages. There were dozens of them, most saying the same thing. Come home, we can talk this out. He apologized, said he didn't mean to hurt me, that he didn't realize how bad things had gotten. It felt like a knife twisting in my gut because a part of me wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that he would stand up to Carla and that we could fix everything, but another part of me knew better. He'd been choosing her over me for years now. Why would it be any different this time? I decided to call him back. It was late and I didn't know if he'd even pick up, but I couldn't keep ignoring him forever. He answered on the second ring, his voice tired but hopeful. We exchanged some awkward small talk at first, neither of us really knowing what to say. Then he dove right into it. I'm sorry, Jason, he said, his voice cracking a bit. I never meant for things to get this bad. I just didn't know how to handle it. I wanted to be mad, but hearing him like that made it hard. He sounded like the dad I used to know, the one who actually cared. But I wasn't about to let him off that easy. You let her push me out, Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You've been letting her control everything for years. It's like I don't even matter anymore. There was silence on the other end for a moment, and I could almost hear him thinking, trying to figure out how to respond. That's not true, Jason. He finally said, you matter more than anything. I didn't realize how much Carla's been pushing you away. I thought we could make this family work. That hit me hard. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something inside me just wouldn't let it go. Then why didn't you stand up for me? Why did you let her treat me like crap? I asked, my frustration boiling over. You always took her side, Dad. Always, he sighed. And for a second, I thought he was going to start crying. I was scared. Jason, after your mom died, I didn't know how to do this on my own. When Carla came into my life, it felt like a second chance, a chance to rebuild. But I never wanted to lose you in the process. I didn't know what to say to that. I'd never heard Dad sound so vulnerable before, and it threw me off. But at the same time, I couldn't just forgive him. Not yet. I don't know if I can come back, Dad, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. Not with her still there. I get it, he said, and I could hear the sadness in his voice. But can we at least try, please? I didn't answer right away. I wanted to. I wanted to say yes and go back to how things used to be, but I knew that wasn't possible. Things were too messed up now. I'll think about it, I told him. And before he could say anything else, I hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation over and over in my head. Was I being too hard on Dad? Should I give him another chance? Or was I right to stay away? I didn't know anymore. I felt torn between wanting my old life back and knowing that things would never be the same. The next day, Ryan noticed something was off. I guess I wasn't as good at hiding my feelings as I thought. We were sitting in the living room eating breakfast when he finally asked, "You okay, man?" I shrugged. "Yeah, I guess I talked to Dad last night." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "And he wants me to come back," I said, staring at my cereal like it had the answers I needed. He apologized, said he didn't realize how bad things were. Ryan didn't say anything at first, but I could tell he was thinking hard. Do you believe him? That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? Did I believe Dad? Part of me did, but another part just couldn't forget how he'd let things get this bad in the first place. I don't know. I admitted. I want to, but Carla's still there. Ryan finished for me. I nodded. Yeah, Ryan sighed and leaned back in his chair. Look, man, I get it. I know you miss Dad, and I know you want things to be different, but if you go back and nothing changes, you're just going to end up right back where you started. He was right. I knew he was right, but it didn't make the decision any easier. For the next few days, I kept going back and forth in my head. I'd get a text from Dad and it would make me want to pack up and head back home. But then I'd remember all the crap I'd been dealing with and I'd change my mind again. It was exhausting. Finally, after about a week of indecision, I decided to have one last talk with Dad. Not at the house, though. I wasn't ready to face Carla yet. I texted him to meet me at the park where we used to go when I was a kid. It felt like neutral ground, a place where maybe we could talk without all the baggage hanging over us. When Dad showed up, he looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was messier than usual and he had bags under his eyes. For a second, I felt guilty for putting him through all this, but then I reminded myself that this wasn't all my fault. We sat on one of the old benches, neither of us saying anything at first. Finally, Dad broke the silence. "I've missed you, Jason," he said, his voice soft. "I've missed you, too, Dad," I admitted. "But I don't know if I can come back. Not with how things are." He nodded like he'd expected that. "I get it, but I want you to know I'm trying. I talked to Carla. I told her things need to change." That surprised me. "What did she say?" "She wasn't happy about it," he said with a slight smile. "But I don't care. You're my son, Jason. I can't lose you." Hearing that made something shift inside me. Maybe there was a chance to fix things after all. But I still wasn't sure if it was enough. "I just need some time," I told him. And for the first time, Dad didn't push. He just nodded and said, "Take all the time you need." So, after that talk with Dad at the park, I thought maybe things would start to settle down. He'd said all the right things, told me he talked to Carla and that things were going to change. But even though I wanted to believe him, there was still this nagging feeling in the back of my head, like maybe this was just more talk and no action. It wouldn't be the first time. I stayed with Ryan for a few more weeks trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Ryan was cool about everything, never pushing me to make a decision. We kept things pretty chill, just playing video games and hanging out. But I could tell he was worried about me. I wasn't sleeping great, and I kept going back and forth in my head about whether or not I should move back in with Dad. It's like one minute I'd miss him and think maybe I should give it another shot, and the next minute I'd remember how bad things were and get pissed all over again. Then out of nowhere, things took a turn I didn't expect. One afternoon, I was chilling in Ryan's apartment, minding my own business, when I got a call from Molly. Now, Molly's never been the type to reach out unless she absolutely has to. She's always been more on Carla's side, trying to keep the peace and not rock the boat. So, hearing from her was weird enough. But what she told me next threw me off even more. "Jason, you need to come home," she said, her voice shaky. What? Why?" I asked, completely caught off guard. "Dad and Carla, they're fighting like bad. I think she's leaving," she said, her words coming out in a rush. My heart dropped. I didn't know what to think. Carla leaving? That didn't seem possible. She'd basically taken over everything at Dad's house, and now she was just going to up and leave. "Are you serious?" I asked, still trying to wrap my head around it. "Yeah, it's bad. I don't know all the details, but Dad's been really upset, and she's been packing her stuff. You should come back and talk to him," Molly said, sounding more stressed than I'd ever heard her. I didn't know what to do. Part of me was relieved, honestly. If Carla was gone, maybe things could finally go back to normal. Maybe Dad would stop being so passive and we could have our family back, or at least something close to it. But another part of me was wary. It felt too sudden, too convenient. Like, what changed? I told Molly I'd think about it and hung up. Then I sat there for a while just staring at my phone, trying to process everything. Ryan walked in a few minutes later, noticed I looked off and asked what was up. I told him about the call, about Carla maybe leaving, and how Molly wanted me to come back home. Ryan didn't say anything for a minute, just sat down across from me thinking. Finally, he said, "Do you really think things are going to be better if she leaves? Like, I get why that seems like a good thing, but is that really going to fix everything?" I hadn't thought about it like that. I was so focused on Carla being the problem that I didn't really stop to consider if things would actually get better without her. But Ryan was right. There was more to it than just Carla. Dad had let all of this happen. He'd let her walk all over me for years. And even if she was leaving, that didn't change the fact that he hadn't stood up for me when it mattered. "I don't know, man," I said, rubbing my face. "It's just if she's gone, maybe it'd be different, you know? Maybe Dad would, I don't know, be himself again." Ryan gave me this look like he was trying to figure out how to say what he was thinking without pissing me off. "I get it, but just be careful, all right? You can't go back expecting everything to be perfect just because Carla's gone. Dad's still got to step up. You can't keep waiting for him to fix things." He was right, of course, but I wasn't ready to give up on Dad yet. I figured I'd at least go back and see what was happening. Maybe, just maybe, things could change. So, I texted Molly and told her I was coming over. The whole ride there, I was on edge, my mind racing. What would I find when I got there? Would Carla be gone already? Would Dad actually be willing to talk? I didn't know what to expect, but I had to find out. When I pulled up to the house, everything looked normal on the outside, but as soon as I walked in, I could feel the tension. It was thick, like you could cut it with a knife. Molly was sitting on the couch looking pale, and Dad was pacing in the kitchen, running his hands through his hair like he didn't know what to do with himself. "Hey," I said, stepping inside and trying not to sound as nervous as I felt. Dad stopped pacing and looked at me, his face a mess of emotions, anger, sadness, maybe even relief. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Molly just glanced up at me and nodded before looking back down at her phone. "Jason," Dad started, but he trailed off like he didn't even know how to finish that sentence. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, even though my heart was racing. Dad sighed and sat down at the kitchen table, motioning for me to sit across from him. "Carla, she's leaving," he said. "She's had enough. I don't know what to do." I blinked, still trying to make sense of it all. "Why is she leaving now?" He rubbed his eyes, looking more exhausted than I'd ever seen him. "We've been fighting for weeks. After that talk I had with you at the park. I tried to set some boundaries with her. Told her things needed to change, but she didn't take it well. She felt like I was choosing you over her." My stomach dropped. Was this my fault? Did Carla leave because of me? I didn't want this. "Jason," Dad said, his voice breaking a little. "I couldn't just keep letting her control everything. I tried to make it work, but I didn't know what to say." Part of me was glad he'd finally stood up for me, but the other part felt guilty as hell. I didn't want to break up his marriage, even if Carla was awful. I just wanted things to be fair, to feel like I mattered. "Do you want her to leave?" I asked, trying to figure out where his head was at. Dad looked at me, his eyes filled with pain. "I don't know. I love her, but I can't lose you. I don't know what the right thing is anymore." For the first time in a long time, I saw how broken he was. He wasn't the strong, put-together dad I remembered from before Mom died. He was just a guy trying to hold his life together, and it was all falling apart. We sat there in silence for a while, neither of us knowing what to say. Molly had disappeared upstairs at some point, leaving Dad and me to figure this mess out on our own. "I'm not saying I'm ready to come back," I finally said, breaking the silence. But if things are going to change, if you're really going to put me first, maybe we can work on this. Dad nodded, his eyes filled with hope. That's all I want, Jason. I just want us to try and maybe for the first time in a long time, we actually could. All right. So, after that conversation with Dad, I didn't really know where things were going to go. I mean, he said all the right stuff, but after everything that had happened, I wasn't sure if I was ready to just move back in and pretend like things were fixed. It felt too soon. And even though Carla was packing her bags, that didn't mean the whole problem was magically solved. For the next few days, I stayed with Ryan, but the whole situation at home kept weighing on me. Molly would text me little updates here and there, like how Carla had taken a bunch of her stuff and was staying with a friend, but she hadn't fully moved out yet. And Dad, well, he was trying to keep things together, but he was clearly struggling. I felt bad for him, but at the same time, I was angry that it had taken this long for him to realize how bad things had gotten. Then, out of nowhere, Dad calls me and says he wants me to come over for dinner. He's all like, "It's just going to be us, Jason." No, Carla. I guess he was trying to show me that he was serious about fixing things. But I was still hesitant. I didn't want to walk into another awkward family dinner where everything was tense and no one was saying what they really meant. But Ryan, being Ryan, said maybe it was worth going, at least to see where Dad's head was really at. So, I agreed. I mean, what's the worst that could happen, right? The day of the dinner, I drove over to the house, and as soon as I pulled into the driveway, I could feel this weird mix of emotions. It was the first time I'd been back since I packed up and left. And it felt strange, like it was still my house, but it didn't feel like home anymore, if that makes sense. When I walked in, Dad was already in the kitchen cooking, which by the way is not something he usually does. He's more of the order takeout kind of guy, but there he was chopping vegetables and trying to look like he knew what he was doing. It was kind of funny, honestly. The place felt quieter without Carla's constant nagging, but there was this tension in the air, like neither of us knew how to act now that things were changing. "Hey," I said, walking into the kitchen, trying to keep things casual. Dad looked up from whatever he was pretending to cook, and smiled. But it was that kind of awkward smile you give someone when you're not sure how things are going to go. "Hey, Jason. I'm glad you came." "Yeah, well, I figured I'd see what this dinner's all about," I said, leaning against the counter. We made some awkward small talk while he finished up the food. Nothing serious, just stuff about school and how things were going with Ryan. But I could tell he was working up to something. It was like he wanted to say more, but didn't know how to start. Finally, we sat down at the table and after a few bites of what was probably the worst spaghetti I'd ever had. "Sorry, Dad." He cleared his throat and looked at me. "So, how are you feeling about everything?" he asked, his voice a little shaky, like he was nervous about my answer. I put down my fork and leaned back in my chair. "I don't know, Dad. I mean, it's a lot. Carla leaving all the stuff that's happened. It's not exactly easy to just move on from." He nodded like he expected that. "I know I messed up, Jason. I should have listened to you sooner. I guess I was so focused on trying to make this new family work that I didn't realize how much it was hurting you." I didn't say anything at first. It was the same stuff he'd been saying for weeks, but it still felt different hearing it face to face, like maybe he really was starting to get it. "It's not just about Carla," I finally said, trying to find the right words. "It's about you, too. You let her treat me like I didn't matter and you never stood up for me. Even now, I don't know if I can trust that things will be different." Dad looked down at his plate, clearly struggling with what to say. "I get that," he said softly. "And I don't expect you to just trust me right away. I know I've got a lot to prove to you, but I want to make things right. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." I could tell he meant it, but it still didn't erase everything that had happened. Part of me wanted to just forgive him and move on, but another part of me was still hurt and didn't want to get sucked back into the same cycle. "I don't know if I'm ready to move back yet," I said after a long pause. "I need time to figure things out." Dad nodded. And for once, he didn't try to push me. "That's okay. You can take all the time you need. I just want you to know that I'm here and I'm going to keep working on things, even if it takes a while." We finished dinner in mostly silence, but it wasn't the awkward kind this time. It was more like we were both processing everything, trying to figure out where to go from here. When I left that night, I didn't feel like everything was magically fixed, but I did feel a little better, like maybe, just maybe, there was hope for us after all. Over the next few weeks, I kept my distance. I stayed at Ryan's and focused on school, trying to keep my head in the game. But Dad kept checking in, sending me texts and calling every few days, not in a pushy way, but just to see how I was doing. It felt like he was